My name's Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I'm calling the meeting of Wednesday, September 9th to order. Today we have 4 items on our agenda. However, the first item, which is 1532 Eucalyptus Hill Drive or Road, has been withdrawn, so it won't be heard. Is there any other changes? No? Okay. Under announcements and appeals, there are 2 upcoming Planning Commission hearings. The first one's tomorrow at 631 Olive Street. It's an appeal of a medical cannabis dispensary permit that was approved by the staff hearing officer last month. And then on the 17th of September, there's another appeal on 617 Bradbury Avenue, and that's a tentative subdivision map and a modification. I don't think there's any other appeals now. Okay, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on our agenda today? No, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which is item B, and then 2201 Stanwood Drive. If the applicant would like to come up.
Thank you. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
The project site, which is a little bit over an acre, has a Stanwood Drive address, but access to it is actually here off Orizaba. Current development on site consists of a single-family residence and a detached accessory structure. At some point over the years, and this has been an ongoing enforcement issue, a porch overhang in this area has been enclosed to expand the floor area of several rooms. And what appears to be an original carport has been enclosed, has a history of illegal dwelling unit use, is now being proposed as the garage, which replaces the required parking for the property. The discretionary application required for this project is a modification to allow the accessory structure and the enclosure of this porch within the required 35 front yard setback off of Orizaba Lane. The expansion of the rooms, as you can see on the floor plan, simply expand an existing bedroom by adding a closet, adding bathing facilities into these 2 existing bathrooms, expansion of a master bedroom, and the addition of a laundry facility. Staff's position that these types of improvements don't really intensify the use of the residence, and although typically we discourage the use of both expansion into front yard setbacks and the use of the modification process for illegal construction, because of the topography change between Orizaba Lane and the property, you really can't even see that the expansions have occurred. Also recognized in reviewing this project were the topography constraints associated on this property that really only make the only buildable envelope here. The flat area out here provides what is like the backyard for the site, and we wouldn't want to reduce this. This is the usable space enjoyed by the family. Now I'm going to talk just briefly about the accessory structure. The applicant is proposing to create 2 regulation-sized parking spaces for the property utilizing the existing structure that's there. In order to meet the minimum dimensions and depth for required parking, an expansion of the existing area is proposed here. The remaining area outside the required parking dimensions is also asking to be maintained as a workshop area or storage and a powder room. Staff is supporting both of the modification requests in that we feel they're minor in nature, they're securing improvements. This one, now we've got regulation-sized parking on a property for as far back as '85, has had issues of not providing required parking. And again, this small area, which I believe constitutes just over 200 square feet, but it allows expansion of the existing floor plans in an area that's not visible from the right-of-way. Staff is asking for approval of this project as it's submitted, with a couple conditions that, as shown on the plans, removal of illegal structures installed here in the setback and reduction of some of the vegetation to improve visibility when exiting out onto Orizaba. It's a very narrow road.
Okay, and transportation staff has reviewed the backup space and feels comfortable with it?
That is correct. We have been out to the site and using their templates. Although from a single-family residence, one is allowed to back out, it has been determined that the maneuver can actually occur on-site for a safer forward exit.
Yeah, we have 25 feet from this corner, so we have a safe backup distance.
Well, when I went out to the site yesterday, I tried to back, from here, and it was really hard.
What you need to understand is when you're using some of the area inside the garage
You can turn
to
earlier.
start your turn.
Right.
It does. I had the same concerns for my site visit.
Good point.
Okay, if you'd like to state your name for the record and any additional comments.
My name is Tony Zcase. I'm the designer and the agent for the owners. Oh, is this on?
We are on. Maybe just pull it a little closer. There you go.
My name's Tony Zcase. I'm the agent for the owners. They live out of town. They couldn't be here today. And I just want to point out that this whole thing started when they put their house on the market. These had always been this way. My clients themselves actually enclosed this area, but this had always been a covered porch. But this had always been in question about whether that was a carport or garage, and there's really no clear answer as far as the archives go. One document calls it a garage, one document calls it a carport. Either one of them is undersized per current standards. So we're proposing by adding this little extension to the garage, to come up with two clear covered parking spaces. So I think that's a big improvement. And then what happened is this setback used to be a private driveway. The Orizaba was deeded to the city back in the 80s, I think, and so that formed a secondary front yard setback. That's where all this the setback line moved back here. So all these improvements were in the setback, and that's kind of what triggered this whole thing. So we're
driving down Orizaba Lane, it does not feel like a public road. It's narrow, no curbs.
Yeah, I think it only serves like 3 houses on that whole street. So it's apparently they made some kind of a deal that the city would do the maintenance on the private road, and that's kind of what started this whole thing. And so here we are, 20 years later, trying to fix all these problems. So I think it's a good solution. And again, this was always a covered porch, so that was already technically existing. So.
Now, what made you choose the addition to the garage in this area versus moving it back away from the setback?
Because we have this half bath in here and a little storage area, and I think just looking at it from a design standpoint, that it would be easier to have the 2 parking spaces at this end of it rather than this end. Because that way we can keep our little storage area and the little half bath that's already there. It's actually a full bath, and we're going to remove some of the fixtures there to make it into a half bath that just serves like a little workshop area there.
Now, when I went up to the site, there was a nice for rent sign on the garage.
Yeah, they're trying. Well, not the garage. They're trying to rent the house.
Oh, well, it was in the window of the.
Yeah, because you can't see anything. I spoke to the owners about that, and you can't see the house from Stanwood, and the only place you can't even see the house from Orizaba, so the natural place to put it was on the window here. But they're not. But they want to rent out the whole house, not just the. They know that we can't rent that out anymore.
What other alterations are you going to do to that structure? Like there's tile in the floor. Are you going to take that out and make it a?
Yeah, it would just be a concrete floor for a garage. So, yeah, that'll all come out. And
is that the kind of thing we require at plan check?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
The tile.
Yeah,
We'll reduce the amenities that associate it with the habitable space. Also, a zoning compliance declaration will be required to be recorded against the property's title, which acknowledges by the property owner the use of that building is to remain as parking, not to be used
we want
as
to fully
anything
comply
else.
with all the rules.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2201 Stanwood Drive? No, I haven't received any letters on this one.
I have not either.
So there's none for this. Okay. There was one from Paula Westbury on the first item that was postponed.
We didn't receive one on this one.
Okay.
Paula Westbury actually wrote a letter in support of this, when we went to
it's
ADR,
as is?
or a single-family design, as right
Leave
as
it as is.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of a neat thing.
All right, I'll close the public hearing. So like I said, I went out to the site and drove all the way down the lane just to get a feeling of what the setbacks were. And I'm sure you've heard generally I'm not in support of front yard modifications. Just because of the feel of the street and the public importance of the front yard area. But in this instance, I think it is different in that Orizaba Lane is truly, it seems more like a private road, although I know private roads, we still require the front yard setback. But given the history of the development of this lane and the location of the houses, I feel the encroachment is okay. My questions that I have to you is, the location of this area. I was concerned with the backup space. That's why I was wondering if you would add in the rear of the lot and connect the two, because I know the distance between buildings issue, but then you're just broadening the encroachment even closer.
Yeah.
And moving it down in this area, these improvements can be removed. They don't need to be in there. However, I think it makes the backup worse, because in this instance, this car can back up and go out like this, whereas if you're pushed it over in this area, you don't have any room to back up. You'd have to do some big changes. So for those reasons, I think that I could make the findings in the staff report. And I would like to add, it's noted on the plan, but the other problem I had leaving the site was this vegetation, so I would like just to add the condition that the vegetation within 10 feet of the driveway, 20 feet back, be reduced per our code,
Okay.
just to visibility.
I think, is that note, is that what that note says?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we addressed that, right?
Okay. And then also the condition proposed by staff with the zoning compliance declaration.
Okay.
Okay?
And that the application be filed, the plans be submitted within a timely manner. We were thinking maybe 30 days
Okay.
to get this resolved, especially if the property is being proposed for rental. We want to get the parking restored.
We have to go back to single-family design
That's
board
correct.
at the next step, right?
For your
So-
final approval, and then
Right.
construction plans to the building official for your permit.
So my only concern is that I just want to make sure that we can get on the calendar for within those 30 days that you.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay. All right.
Their agendas have been pretty light.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So what the condition that's proposed by staff says is, said approval is subject to a condition that the zoning compliance declaration be recorded against the property's title, and that a building permit be obtained for the abatement of all outstanding violations within 30 days of this approval. Is this per enforcement, or 30 days is what, or change?
We just thought we would establish it as a part of this approval.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay.
So this action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all actions that occur here. And within that same 10-day appeal period, they could decide to call this up if it warrants further discussion by them. And if that was to occur, Ms. Milazzo would contact you.
All right.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The next item is 914 California Street, if the applicant would like to come up.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you. Okay, this project site, just over 6,000 square feet, has an E1 zoning designation and an overall slope in excess of 38%. It has frontage onto Oramus Road as well as California Street. Current development on site consists of a single-family residence in this location, non-conforming to its front yard setback, and a carport here, which is non-conforming as to both front yard setbacks. The carport is identified here in pink. The proposed project involves demolition of the carport and replacement with a two-car garage in that same location, of course allowing for the expansion in size. The new garage will secure an appropriate improvement, and now the vehicles that are parked, and as you can see on the visuals, will be in a completely enclosed structure with an architectural style that matches that of the residence. Transportation staff has reviewed the project because staff initially had concerns with the solid wall construction on what could be a dangerous corner.
Yes.
The applicant, cars are accelerating up. We understand that. And kind of a pattern of development up there on Aramis. People are probably very sensitive to the fact that cars are backing out, almost blinded. The project has been designed with a window here too, and although the window could be covered or obstructed, it will allow an additional safety feature for the structure. Staff is asking for support of this based on its visual improvement and the fact that it preserves the historic location for parking on the site, on a site that really doesn't offer any other options.
Okay, great, thank you. If you'd like to state your name and association with the project, if you have anything else to add.
I'm Beth Witherell. My husband and I own the house. And the carport has been there for probably 50, 60 years. The first reason to change it is that it's about to fall down. And we also feel that a secure place to park the cars will be... We were evacuated in both of the last two fires, and we feel that a solid structure will provide some more fire protection and will give us more security for parking the cars.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 914 California Street? No, I didn't receive any letters on this one.
I did not either.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site, and Roxanne actually addressed some of the concerns when I was exiting the site for Aramis to go to California Street. You really have to stick your head out to see down the street. So this landscaping is a real impediment, and I see there's a condition here that's requiring it to be removed or reduced, this area here.
Right.
The other issue I was looking at is the length of the carport. I noticed that in the front yard setback here, you're proposing a 23-foot by 20, so it's actually larger than the
It is.
minimum.
Yeah, you can see that on the...
It's the minimum requirement's 20 feet by 20 feet, and I think since you are requesting a front yard encroachment, that generally when they are supported in the front yard, that it's the minimum dimension, 20 by 20. I think there is, or not I think, there is other options on site for additional storage that doesn't need to occur in the front setback.
Did you see other options?
There's open areas you can there's other areas in here that you can put the storage.
Well, there's storage under the deck already, but it's open storage. It's not enclosed storage, and it's not secure. And this is a ravine.
Okay.
It just falls off to,
Okay. Well, which you're requesting relief from the standards of the front setback, and I understand the justifications for it to make a more aesthetically pleasing structure on the site and to provide for the secure parking. But I could not support a garage that's larger than the minimum size in a front yard setback.
Okay.
So I could approve the project with the condition that the minimum dimensions be 20 by 20, or I can deny it as proposed, and you can appeal it up to the Planning Commission and request them. I mean, you can even appeal the 20 by 20 foot dimension.
Okay.
But I don't believe I could support a larger than the minimum requirement garage in the setback.
Is that for aesthetic reasons, or?
Just, I don't feel that that is an appropriate use of the front yard setback area.
Okay, well, you saw that all we have here is a walkway. I mean,
Right,
there's no yard here. There's no use for, this area of land is just, it's an area that has a retaining wall and just some plants.
Right, there's, yeah.
Rosemary. It's not useful for us in any way. It's not visible. And so using it, enclosing it, and increasing our storage seemed like a reasonable proposition.
Okay, the
Well, you
findings
can't see it from here. You can't really see it from here.
The findings I need to make is that the modification is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot and is consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance sets out setbacks for development. I understand your site's constrained. It has 2 front yard setbacks
Yeah.
and it's sloped, and that's why I'm inclined to support the rebuilding of the conversion of the carport to the garage and expanding it to meet the minimum requirements. Providing storage in a front setback area is not consistent with the zoning ordinance. You're not allowed to store things in a setback area. So I don't feel the provision of an elongated garage is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance.
Okay. So tell me again, what are my options?
Oh, I can approve your project today with a 20-foot interior dimension by 20-foot interior dimension. Or I can just flat out deny the application.
Okay.
And in either instance, you have the ability to appeal it to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So,
Is Roy here? No. Do I have to tell you right now? Can I consult
I
with the
suggest we
person who's doing
take
the
action
design?
on it.
either one of 2 things. We have one more item on the agenda. I can continue to the end of the hearing, which
That would
I
be-
don't know when that would be, so you need to monitor, because if we're done and you're not here...
Right. I'd stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to call Roy Harthorne.
And get his opinion?
And get his opinion.
Sure.
Because he's the one who's been doing the work for us.
Okay. I have no problem. So I will continue 9th.
Excuse me, Ms. Reardon, I mean, why not take action on it if, after speaking with Roy, it's an unsatisfactory decision, then you'll appeal it?
Oh, so I'd appeal it. That's okay.
But it's yeah, you'd
Okay,
appeal it. And
well, then I will accept the change.
Okay.
And then I'll talk to Roy about the possibility of an appeal.
There you go.
Okay, because there's an appeal fee, and then it's scheduled before the Planning Commission, and so
Okay.
you want to do that way? Okay.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do is just accept the condition of making it smaller.
Correct.
All right.
And then I'll discuss with Roy what's involved
Okay.
in the next
The
step.
appeal. Okay, yes.
Okay.
So then I approve your project with the conditions that the landscaping on the corner be reduced or removed to enhance visibility as it is in the proposed conditions by staff, and then
Right.
also that the interior dimensions of the carport not exceed 20 feet by 20 feet.
Okay, and that's larger than the carport now.
Yes.
But not as large as the...
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. So it'd be
and
3
I think
feet.
it'll be this wide.
Yes.
But it'll be shorter.
Yes, so it'd be
Okay.
20 this way and then 20 back
Okay.
towards the house.
All right.
Okay? And like I just advised you, it is appealable.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next application is 2 West Mission Street. Thank you, yeah. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, yes, here, let's give them to Gloria so she can record them. Anytime you're ready, Danny. Is Allison not coming?
No, it's my project. Ready?
Anytime.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Reardon. My name is Danny Cato, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. I'm the case planner for this project, with a lot of help from Allison DeBusk, one of my staff members. The project that you have before you today is the proposal for a medical cannabis dispensary permit at 2 West Mission. which is on the northwest corner of Mission and State Street. We have a site plan here, State Street, Mission. The corner business is Garrett's. It's a restaurant, and across Mission Street is the Arco station. And this is a little 600 square foot existing commercial space that used to be a upholstery store, upholstery shop. The applicants are proposing in the little 600 square foot. There's an existing doorway that they propose to make into a little inset doorway. You'd enter, there's a reception and waiting area here with a bathroom, and then a secure dispensary room, and then a little workroom with a safe. And I believe this is where the video camera stuff equipment would go as well. The existing space basically just has a little bathroom, and that's it. It's just wide open. The applicants propose a large number of cameras and motion detectors and such to look not only inside but outside. Let's see, there are a number of photos that are in the file, which I'll just have out for you to peruse. But for the camera, this is a rendering showing the new doorway and a couple of big windows, and then this shows the back side with a couple of with the cameras, and then this shows a side view of the driveway entrance going around to the back, again with a couple of cameras shown on the building. Staff has reviewed the operational plan and found that it complies with all the requirements of the cannabis dispensary ordinance. It is in a location that is allowed. It is in the C2 zone, like I said, 2 West Mission Street.
Thank you.
It is more than 500 feet from any park or school as defined in the ordinance, and also more than 500 feet from any other dispensary that we know of anyway.
Any other legal one?
And there are there are 2 legal ones, only one is actually operating, and those are both on Milpas Street. Okay, so it meets the locational requirements, it meets the operational requirements, and I'll let the applicants speak more to how they plan to operate the dispensary in conformance with the ordinance. But given that it does, and given that it meets all the locational and operational requirements, and that we believe that it meets the criteria for issuance, therefore we are recommending approval, making the findings that are outlined in the staff report subject to the conditions of approval that are also attached as attachment or Exhibit A of the staff report. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you. If you want to state your name and association with the project and anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, Nick Garcia, the architect.
I'm Hans Edwards. My wife, Medicina, doesn't have a seat in this moment as we expected her to have it arise after we finish.
Yeah, we can overture. Yeah.
And this is John Stenmo, who is the security person that's here to answer any questions about security. Might come up. I'll start with a presentation on the building that we did, just briefly. We do have, as required by the ordinance, a secured reception area and a secure door that allows people to come in only upon being buzzed in and check the credentials. We will have a guard that will check that. And then we're upgrading for ADA, and we have a workroom and a dispensary area. The dispensary area is entered only after they have been verified all credentials at the secured reception area. I do want to bring up Captain Martell brought out a concern about the recess, security concern about the recess. The reason we did the recess was because there's about over a 2.5-inch rise right here as the sidewalk comes down. So we needed to recess it to slope up the area for ADA compliance. However, I did talk to the building department, and we do have an option, if we need to come to maybe take out this window, right in the middle of this window, put a door with a light on each side, and come in more directly in this area. The sidewalk does go up, so we may be able to meet the ADA that way if there continues to be a concern. So we offer that as an option to Captain Martell's concern. And I just wanted to mention that. We would have to take this back to the ABR, but ABR, as long as we put, I believe, the same type of windows we put in here, it would I think, be an enhancement to the building. So we have those two options.
This area, it wouldn't have to be recessed. It could be flush with, is what
Right,
you're
it's
saying.
because
Okay.
the sidewalk rises. And the reason for recess here is to make that rise for the ADA.
Okay.
And so I just mentioned that as two options and would like to be sure we have that okay with you
Okay.
on those two options. Okay, I basically that's all we're doing on the architecture with the cameras. You saw the elevations in the cameras. And I would let Mr. Edwards talk about their operation plan and
Okay.
the profile of the plan.
Okay.
Would you like to make a statement?
You can move the mic.
Hello, I'm Francisca Melusina Edwards. I was educated at University Metropolitana in Mexico City, majoring in communications and business. I created my own apparel manufacturing company in downtown Los Angeles, which I owned for 26 years, and I had about 26 employees. I sold my line of apparel through the whole United States in major department stores, catalogs, and boutiques. And what I tend to do is to make the medical cannabis available to the people in need within a safe, secure, professional, and legal establishment using the know-how and professionalism that I was accustomed in my past business. I'm also very open to work with the community and charity organizations.
Thank you.
I'm Hans Edwards, and I was educated as a pre-medicine major at Kansas State University. Graduated with a BA and MA in 1965, 1967. I did PhD work at the University of Minnesota under the direction of Herbert Feigl, and finished at UCLA with Donald Kalish and Richard Montague in 1974, concentrating on logic and foundation of mathematics. My business background is in retail, wholesale, and manufacture, principally in the apparel business. We are committed to the legal dispensing of medical cannabis in order to assist residents with various medical conditions in a dignified, professional, and socially responsible format that complies with the rules and regulations of the City of Santa Barbara and its police department. With the city's approval, we would like to construct a legal medical cannabis dispensary by the name of Santa Barbara Green Care to provide health benefits to patients who have been recommended to us for treatment by their licensed physicians. We would like to become the new role model of how a government-approved dispensary should be operated. Because we strongly believe in alternative medicines and treatments, we will offer our patients a referral service to affiliated providers of products such as Chinese herbs and to affiliated practitioners such as acupuncturists, nutritionists, and hospice care nurses. These products and treatments will be offered to our patients at substantial discounts that Santa Barbara Green Care will subsidize. We chose the location of 2 Mission Street because we were looking for a quiet neighborhood with a low crime rate, with nightclubs, without nightclubs and bars and active, crowded entertainment places, and distant from any other dispensaries. In fact, I believe that the only dispensary that is close to us is just over 2,000 feet on De La Vina. This location is easily visible as required by the law, and it is easily accessible by both public and private transportation, thereby accommodating the needs of the community. Finally, according to the 2008 census statistics, Santa Barbara's senior citizen population is of age 65 and over is almost 20% larger than the average population of any other city of its kind in California. That means that many of these senior citizens live here in this area and suffer from conditions for which cannabis has been providing a benefit. We plan to contribute a portion of our income to community projects through charitable organizations such as Santa Barbara Beautiful Urban Forest, Catholic Charities, Hospice of Santa Barbara, and others. With the help of Marty Correa, our public relations manager, we have been working with the community and have already started to introduce ourselves to some of these charities that we are considering. We have sent out a letter and informed about our project to the property owners of the area in order to follow up the announcement by the Planning Commission of our hearing and to offer them the opportunity to discuss any issues or concerns that they may have. We have also met with the tenant business owners of our area to answer their questions about our project. We are very open to discussing whatever issues and questions anyone may have. Regarding our operation system, we're planning a system of 12 cameras, including 5 internal and 7 external, video information retaining capacity of, I think, about 21 days.
Yeah, we're looking at 21 to 60 days, depending on amount of traffic.
The system will be capable of monitoring the exterior perimeter, particularly the entire parking lot and its driveway to the north, including the rear doors of all the neighboring businesses that are part of the same complex, and the sidewalk and streets to the south and west of the building. The alarm system on the premise is monitored by a professional alarm monitoring agency, and any disturbance will evoke immediate response from the Santa Barbara Police Department. The system performs even if telephone lines or electric supply are interrupted. To discourage burglary and robbery, we plan to keep low cash balances and a minimum of inventory on the premise. A professional licensed security host will be on site to ensure the safety and security of the employees and patients internally and the security of the immediate neighborhood externally. The security host on the premise will be responsible for managing the daily cleanup of trash and litter in the mornings and evenings within the area under surveillance. The removal of graffiti that may appear in that area within 72 hours of its occurrence. The monitoring of external areas surrounding the building to prevent loitering, congregating, consumption of product, and any other nuisance or suspicious activities. The maintenance of the alarm system and security systems prior to opening and at closing times to ensure their proper functioning, and during working hours, he will be responsible for. The ushering of potential patients to the reception area as they enter or attempt to enter. The ushering of valid patients into the dispensing area. The ushering of patients ready to leave through the front entrance. He will also manage the communications among him and all the other personnel on the premise to integrate their activities and respond to any security problems. The receptionist, of course, will check the documents of potential patients for validity by calling the physicians or checking it on internet. Now it's possible to do that. And they will also check the doctors for being licensed physicians. The receptionist will have the patient sign the rules of the house that commit them to normal etiquette and specific things, concerns such as not smoking in the area, in the parking lots, or even in their cars as they are driving home, and not until basically they get home. So if you have any questions for me, I would rather proceed by answering such questions.
Okay, well, I do have some questions, but did you want to add anything? Or?
Oh, no, I just would like to answer any concerns you would have with security.
Okay. But first, before I get to my questions, I'll open the public hearing and have the public do testimony, then we'll have questions, okay?
All right.
So I'm going to open the public hearing for 2 West Mission Street. When I call your name, you can come up and
Bring a chair.
have a seat in the chair. The first one is Royal Aganoli.
like to know why this is necessary to have this cannabis dispensary in the first place. Cannabis is legal with a prescription. Why not distribute it to pharmacy where all the prescriptions are filled? To have the exclusive dispensary and invited clients who will come in and try hoping to get some outside the law. Parking could be a problem on Mission Street and its very busy intersection. I wonder why you would put this type of business in a partly residential area when at the very least it could be set up in a shopping center or totally in a commercial area. I don't see why it couldn't even be put in a hospital, a little spot in the hospital where it's controlled and better controlled. So that's about what I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Chris Weber.
Hello. You guys hear me all right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. So, my name is Chris Weber, and I'm a licensed acupuncturist, and I specialize in Chinese and Western herbs. I graduated from Santa Barbara College of Oriental Medicine with a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine in 2003. I have worked at the Santa Barbara Herb Clinic for the past 7 years as a full-time acupuncturist and pharmacist. And again, my specialization is in Chinese and Western herbs. A vast majority of my patients suffer from cancer or Western cancer treatments, and a good portion of these patients use cannabis as a way to combat various side effects. In my clinical experience, I have found that cannabis to be very effective in treating nausea, vomiting, lack of appetite, and pain. I favor the concept of having a comprehensive herbal clinic, including cannabis, medical establishment that offers information on medicinal supplements, as well as medical practitioners in the local area would be extremely beneficial to the Santa Barbara community. I know in the past that the majority of cannabis clubs have gotten opposition, and I think rightfully so. The clubs do not follow state and local law, are not open and appealing to the general community, and have attracted patients that, in my opinion, have questionable needs. I have spoken with Hans and Meilu and can see that their goals are to provide services to those who are in need of quality medical care. They intend to contribute to this community by sharing their enthusiasm and proactive and integrated approach to alternative medicines and services, and would like to also bring alternative medicine to those who are truly in need. I believe that they will do this in a professional and compassionate manner. I also see this establishment as being a legitimate medical facility as opposed to a recreational supplemental service. I will be affiliated with Green Care as a referral practitioner for those in need of acupuncture and also herbal consultation. I look forward to working with Hans, Meilu, and Green Care.
Great, thank you. The next speaker I have is Chris Aganoli.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm opposed to the medical marijuana dispensary occupying the space at 2 West Mission Street. I am a property owner on the block across the street. We own several apartment buildings with my father, Royal, who spoke earlier. I'm 43 years old, and I was born and raised on the next block over from this proposed dispensary. And this is a family neighborhood, and it should be maintained this way. Federal law prohibits the use of or possession of marijuana. It is illegal. The federal marijuana laws are very serious, and punishment for people found guilty is frequently very steep. Federal law still considers marijuana dangerous and an illegal drug, just like heroin or cocaine, with no acceptable medicinal value. And if your interpretation of the state law is that medical marijuana is legal, then it should be sold at a regular drugstore. And I understand and appreciate from the applicant that for our safety there would be, I think they mentioned 12 cameras and security guards, but that's really not Santa Barbara. That reminds me of areas that I don't live in. It just doesn't seem like it would be a good fit for Santa Barbara. And I hope you would consider the neighborhood and disallow this dispensary. And on a personal note, I own the building, our Suncoast building at 3112 State Street, and we did have a dispensary next door to us for several years. And they too had cameras and security guards, but it was just a nightmare having them as a neighbor. The parking situation was terrible. I'm not a doctor, but my diagnosis of these so-called patients that would come were typically a car full of kids that would roll up blaring their music, littering our parking lot as one went to get their prescription. So I hope you just take that all into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Marty Carrera? Is that one? Korea?
Marty Correa.
Great, thanks, sorry.
That's okay. I am Marty Correa, and I'm just here to support the application. I think that they've done a lot of work in following the ordinance, and they are wanted to assist in the community. I've walked some of the neighborhood and there is a lot of support in the neighborhood. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Gil Mintz? Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, folks. I am Gil Mintz, MD. I am a retired OBGYN of 30 years. I'm here today to support Mrs. Edwards' application for an herbal store and dispensary that will conform with all local and state laws and requirements. I am sure that you have all read her printed letter to the community outlining her proposed business. If not, I have some copies here for you. Santa Barbara's tourist trade is its main industry and source of income. There is also a trade that is comprised of locals, retired, elderly, permanent residents, and in some cases suffering with illness, amenable to the alternative medical modalities Mrs. Edwards will be providing. In today's medical field, alternative, integrative, and complementary medicine is being more and more accepted and practiced by the great majority of physicians. Medical schools, including my alma mater of UC Irvine College of Medicine, has an entire department devoted to complementary alternative medicine. This includes herbal medicine and is not only limited to cannabis dispensing, as some other quasi-legal dispensaries are doing. Mrs. Edwards is dedicated in her plan to offer the community a safe and completely legal and secure establishment for this purpose that will enhance the local neighborhood, produce tax revenue for the city, as well as support some planned philanthropies, as she's mentioned. The community needs this facility for the above-mentioned reasons, as well as the need to service the medical requirements of some of the local elderly and ill residents, and is very fortunate that Mrs. Edwards is willing and able to go to the trouble and expense to make this happen. Mrs. Edwards is adamant about the legality of the operation, the security of the premises, and the safety and peace and quiet of the neighbors, as well as the patients. She will not cater to quote-unquote recreational users or allow the premises to become a hangout for its clients, nor permit the use of any purchases on the premises or adjacent street or parking areas. A state-of-the-art, high-tech, sophisticated computer system is also planned for instant validation and verification of the doctor's recommendation as well as the patient's own credentials. I have, as they say, been around for a long time, and I'm not easily fooled. Mrs. Edwards' facility will be an asset to this community. I will be happy to remain after the meeting and address any questions you may need answered. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on this application? No, I'd like to note for the record that I've received a number of letters. I've a total of 4 in opposition, 53 in support. There were 2 petitions in support submitted with a total of 649 signatures, and then just 3 separate letters that were submitted as a public outreach type method from the owner and agent and from Marty Carrera. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. I went out to the project site and visited the neighborhood, and I've read the staff report, and there's some additional clarifications that I'd like you guys to address. One of the comments we've heard at the public hearing, and I've also noticed when I went out on the site, was the parking situation. And if you can explain how it works now and how you envision it to work. I parked in the rear, and there's a lot of signs talking tenants, the tattoo parlor. Are they open for everyone to share? Are they assigned, or how's the parking going to work?
My understanding is that there's assigned parking, and we would be willing to provide our assigned parking to patients who wish to go up there. But it's very steep to drive in, and I believe there's plenty of parking on the street, down State Street. There's many green spots, 15-minute spots.
Well, there's a loading zone out in front, but the actual parking, do you know what the parking
No, these are green spots in the front.
Yeah, 15-minute.
15-minute green spots.
Right.
I'll clarify that. From the city's records, this is like any other parking lot, is open for the people that come and go for clients. The fact that it's been assigned is something that the owner has done, but it is, from the records standpoint, a public parking area. That's all I can say.
And so you have access. You'll be able to use the parking in the rear for.
Yes, that's
according
how it seems to work.
That's how it seems to work from city, and from the city. That's how it's approved.
Okay. The other question, and you addressed it in your presentation, was regarding the recessed door. And Mr. Kato, did you speak to the police department regarding?
Yes, I did. I talked to Captain Armando Martel, and he also, well, he prefers a non-recessed, although from his perspective, a recessed doorway would work. He said he did prefer it to be flush, just so it's easier for officers that are driving by to see anyone who's going in and out. And unfortunately, I was playing around with the volume in the room, so I didn't hear the two alternatives. I was talking to Chris Hansen, the supervisor of plan check in the building department, and he was saying that there's some possible methods that would allow a flush door, and I think one of them was moving them over to this location, right?
That was the proposal. The main reason for the recess was because of the height difference at the sidewalk and at the door. The only way we can mitigate that is to move it over where the sidewalk rises up. And as a matter of fact, it came as a thought after I walked out there, after Captain Martel gave me that concern. I went out there and I looked at it to be sure that we can kind of move it up, and it would then maybe meet his preference. Although he did say we could leave it recessed if we put lighting and very well lit. Our preference might be to try to meet his concerns and try to get it flush and take it back to ABR.
Right, and there is a possibility that, depending on what the Public Works engineering staff would say, to maybe have the door right here and change the actual grade of the sidewalk. You know, do some concrete work to flatten it out, and then have a steeper slope that would kind of match up down at this side.
Yeah, I actually did look at that also, and that is possible. The issue with that, and it would probably require, I would take it to a civil engineer to do some public works drawings on it, but it would require, this end of the sidewalk would be a little higher than the curb, and it would require either a little slope back to the curb or a little separation from the back of the curb with a little planter strip or something to pick up that difference. But I think that it's something that we could also investigate with a civil engineer for public works conformance.
So I guess to sum up, Ms. Reardon, there are some alternatives to the inset door in this location.
And to sum up, we will also pursue those alternatives aggressively to try to get to minimize the recess because of his concern.
Okay. And then your proposed hours of operation is 11 to 7 Monday through Saturday, and then 1 to 5 on Sundays?
That's the proposal.
In reviewing the operational plan, I had some questions on it. There's some exhibits that were referred to that weren't included in my packet. And looking at the security plan that was in the packet versus the security plan, and I guess it's a question for you, that's in the packet, they don't match. And so I'm wondering what is, like the one in the packet includes a roof camera in the rear corner, which isn't here, and then there's 2 covert cameras at the front, and they're not
on the
plan. So what
we were proposing to do here, and I don't know if Gil may need to make some changes, is you're going to have a covert camera here that's going to watch people exiting. Our background is financial industry, so what we would want to do is if there's a crime perpetrated in here, that would catch the person exiting. The recess that we were talking about a few minutes ago, we're looking at, if this is the approved design, we're looking at putting an additional camera here just watching this entry area, and they had brought up putting also lighting in here to prevent somebody from coming in. So there's been a small change here in this area.
Now, if the door was moved over in this area, how would that change what's...
Well, we would eliminate the camera that we were planning on adding, basically, and just have the covert camera here at this point. The roof camera that was proposed originally was taken off the plan because of the security that we're going to have, inside the branch. These cameras are not, they're put in as a deterrent. I think we all know that if somebody, really wants in, they're going to do what they got to do. So this camera wouldn't really be seen. And, we want camera presence out here, so the chances of somebody breaking in on the roof didn't warrant having a camera up in that location.
I would say that the other difference is the fact that the original plan, I think, was many more cameras, that probably an excessive amount of cameras comparing to what was needed, according to review from the Captain Martel, as to what he would feel would be sufficient. So we kind of modified it and took the number down to meet what he would feel be the requirements.
Okay, so in answer to my question, this is the one that you're proposing?
Yes.
Okay. So like on page 3 of the dispensary cannabis permit application, where it refers to Exhibit D1 and D2, it says proposed security plan and security system layout plan for complete discussion of front door and area security. So what you're talking about is this sheet here, sheet A6.
What did it say there again?
The reference here on this section, it refers you, the front door is the only entrance to 2 West Mission Street. See Exhibit D1 and D2. Proposed security plan and security system layout plan for complete discussion of the front door and security.
Yes, that's true. There would be the revised to the sheet A6.
Okay, so that should be, there's a number of revisions that will be necessary to this plan and be submitted to
Okay.
staff if that's what happens here. The other one...
Mr. Erdin, Exhibit D1 refers to the proposed text of the security plan, which I think you...
That's up front. I have...
Yeah, you looked at that, right? That's part of the attachments to the staff report.
So that... But it's not noted as such here.
No, somehow that didn't show up at the bottom. Okay, but this is Exhibit D1.
So sheet A6
And Exhibit D1.
which will be properly labeled.
Yeah.
There was a comment, a public comment, discussing or questioning the location of this dispensary, why it is in a residential area, not in a shopping center or in a hospital. Would you like to respond to that?
Certainly.
Being
The ordinance allows dispensaries within the C2 zone, the CM zone, and additionally some areas on Outer State Street and Milpa Street and the Mesa. There is no prohibition of these within a certain distance of either residential zones or residences themselves. And, you know, as many people know, the ordinance committee will be reviewing the ordinance for potential changes. We don't know what those changes might be at this time. But as the ordinance stands, there is no prohibition against these within, you know, because they're, I mean, it is in a commercial area. It is zone C2.
And in regards to being next to residential uses,
There's no prohibition for that. In fact, when we looked at the original ordinance, that was something that we were looking at, but the council was looking at and decided not to have that as part of the ordinance that was adopted.
and then the other question I asked about the parking in the rear, and there's loading zones in front. This area is not identified as a parking deficit area, is it?
No.
No. And is there a permit program in this area? It doesn't go up this far.
I don't think, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. The other question is on that same page, page 3, where it talks about the ordinance requirement that only dispensary staff, primary caregivers, qualified patients, and persons with bona fide purposes for visiting the site shall be permitted within the dispensary. And your rebuttal to that states that a person who does not possess a letter of recommendation from a licensed physician or a state identification card or does not possess a driver's license for identification will not be allowed to enter the front door of the dispensary unless the staff person is a staff member or has a legitimate reason for entry. A state identification card is a form of identification. You need a recommendation from the licensed physician, not just that you have the state identification card. Right? That's the typo in there?
Well, I think it has to do with identifying who they are to come in here as somebody that we identify. Once they're in here, then they can be qualified from their credentials.
But the way this is written is that you can have a recommendations from your licensed physician or a state identification card. That would get you the legal status of being able to have marijuana, and then it says, or you need a valid California driver's license for identification. This state identification card that's linked with the recommendation, that's saying either a recommendation from a physician or state.
Yeah, no, I think it's linked. Matter of fact, I think sometimes I've seen some of them with a copy of the driver's license right at the bottom.
Well,
what you mean?
The state identification card is based on a recommendation of a licensed physician.
A state identification card identifies you as a resident of California.
More than that, because, for example, in the hospitals where they have vending machines for cannabis, you stick that card in, and that identifies you as a proper user.
Okay, I don't think that's the right name for that then.
Okay, that's possible.
So, because what this is a valid form of ID. It's not, doesn't say that you have a recommendation from your physician to do marijuana.
Well, the recommendation is the primary that allows them to enter for the dispensary.
Right.
However, the identification usually has to be to identify
who you are.
Who you are. That's carried.
Madam Chair, I think there's a little bit of there does need to be a little clarification.
This is the county card.
The county issues, once to someone who has a recommendation for medical cannabis, they can go to the county of Santa Barbara and get a card that's issued by the county that identifies them as a qualified patient. And if they have that, then they don't need both that county card and their recommendation. One or the other would suffice.
Right, and
But I don't believe it's issued by the state. I think that's
That's correct.
We will.
It's the county.
Yeah, we'll.
Yeah.
So
That's what is referred to here.
Is
This is
what-
why I say it's based on the recommendation of a licensed physician.
Right.
So
But the
it's
way
the
this
county.
reads,
Well, we have
what
to
you're-
cross out state and put county in here, and that'll fix
Well, it
it.
needs
That's
to
what's
be-
intended here.
And we'll find out what the exact name of that card is that's issued by the county and add that in, because that's the intent. Am I
Yes, of course.
correct?
Okay, and what is a legitimate reason? What would be, it says, unless the staff person is a staff member or has legitimate reasons for entry.
A legitimate reason could be a repair person that's coming in to fix the plumbing, or any number of things could be a legitimate reason for entering the premise.
Is this in regards to the card?
Yes, if I may offer
You
something.
come up to the table.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may offer some information to clarify this. The card that's issued by the state or county is voluntary. The recipient does not need this. All he needs is to have a recommendation from a physician. What the applicant is referring to is that after they enter the premises with the recommendation, then they need further identification, which a plain old driver's license will do.
Correct, but what's the name of that card that shows them as being a qualified patient?
That is a state or county issued cannabis ID card, and those
So
are
that's the term that we need to replace here.
If I could
right.
say
But
the
that's
exact
voluntary.
term is
But it's voluntary.
MMP program.
Correct.
It's called MMP program.
MMP, exactly. However, that is I want to impress you that that is voluntary. It's not necessary.
Correct, yeah, thank you. What, it was just, the way this is written, that state identification card makes it sound like you can either have the recommendation or the state identification card, and I think what was intended was the card that you just...
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then again, on page 4, it has Exhibit E floor plan and Exhibit F processing flow chart. And I think the problem was that this was just Xeroxed, for ease, and that this was the supplemental, this was the plan. So should we, when they come back in, should this be referred to then sheet?
Yes.
Well, Exhibit E would
what
be,
might
this
have
is...
been what might have been missed in there is the actual reduction of these and exhibits placed in there, which we could do. I think that's what was
Yeah, it just
perhaps
needs to
referring
show.
We refers to the plan, but that's we should we reduce these 8.5 by 11 and place it in that report, and we can do that.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
what
clear
you
of what
can do.
is, it was reviewed. The same problems on page 4 under number 6, where it talks about a valid state identification card will also be accepted in lieu of a physician's letter of recommendation and will be examined for validity. So that's the same, that term's wrong,
Right.
the county card. On page 5, under E1, where it talks about consumption, the ordinance does not allow consumption by patients on the property, but it allows consumption of employees who are qualified patients to consume it in the form of edibles. And I think your first sentence just needs to be clarified. It says, no manner of consumption, whether smoking, vaporization, eating, or imbibing of cannabis will be tolerated in the dispensary within 200 feet of its entrance or within whatever additional area the dispensary is able to control. And then the last sentence says that employees are allowed. So I think you just need to add in there, no manner of consumption by patients.
The patients, okay.
Yes.
And then under number 2, it says, dispensary operation shall not result in illegal redistribution of medical cannabis from the dispensary or use or distribution in any manner which violates state law. And to help ensure that's less likely to happen, you say that you'll only provide cannabis to qualified patients who are members of the cooperative and who will receive cannabis in quantities restricted by the maximum limits per person per day and month according to law. What are the limits?
It's a can of worms, but basically SB 420 allowed 8 ounces to in a given patient, certain numbers of plants for growing also, and this was considered unconstitutional aspect of this 420, but it was then changed back again. So it's these things are in limbo. Ultimately, it's the doctor's responsibility to determine quantity. As far as distribution, however, is concerned, it's up to us what we do. A doctor might prescribe a large amount of cannabis to a patient, but we don't have to give them that. And we may very well elect to have a house rule in terms of a cap on quantity, such as a certain amount per patient per day, for example.
So when they talk about the 8 ounces, it's per day?
That's a lot. Now, if the patient is coming from some distant place, that's known. It's known. There might be a reason why you would want to have the 8, and so there could be exceptional cases. But as a matter of rule, I think that 1 ounce a day per patient is good enough.
Mr. Reardon, the 8 ounces is the total amount that a patient is allowed to possess at any one time. It doesn't say how much you can. I mean, I guess if someone could somehow consume 8 ounces of marijuana a day,
that would be difficult.
I mean, I don't even think that's even possible.
Okay. The other question was on page 6, where retail sales of other items by the dispensary. And the staff hearing officer has the ability to allow other, like commercial sale of specific products, goods, or services in addition to medical cannabis. And in your letter, you say you will not engage in commercial sales of products, goods, or services, but you'll offer that referral service.
Yes.
But then in the letter that was submitted from Marty, and then in your presentation, you talked about herbal. SBGC is planning an herbal store with professional herbalists on its premises, and will offer a variety of medicinal products.
There was a discussion initially about that, but that had to be modified because of security issues with selling these things.
Okay, so you're not.
So we're not doing that.
Okay. So right now it's only going to be medical
We're
cannabis.
strictly referring at this point.
Okay. And then also on page 7, there's all these exhibits, if they could be referred to the right one. I have a question regarding number 4. It talks about security cameras. You've already discussed the difference between the two plans, which one you're proposing to do. And number 4 talks about exterior lighting will be upgraded to afford good visibility during the evening and night. And a lot of times that's going to be after the facility's closed, because there is a condition of approval proposed that the hours be 10 in the morning to 7 at night. But I know we have the lighting ordinance. Do you feel it's necessary to put a condition that the exterior lighting conform to our lighting guidelines? It's just something that's reviewed by ABR? It's on
Yes.
review. Okay.
I would ask that the applicants, I would ask that when the applicants go back to ABR, they show the exterior lighting on the plans.
All right.
Then on your Santa Barbara Green Care Collective rules and regulations, it's just, I don't know what. It again refers to the state of California identification cards, so that needs to be.
It needs to be corrected. There's a
correct
couple
term.
of other things in there too. This is dates back to 2007 actually.
Okay. Like I said, I've read the staff report and I've had a bunch of questions on it. I visited the site, the surrounding neighborhood. I've re-reviewed the ordinance, and this is actually the fourth dispensary that's came before this, before the staff hearing officer. I reviewed two of them, and then two other staff hearing officers reviewed the other one. And it's always a tricky situation because we have this ordinance that was adopted a little over a year ago that sets out locations for these dispensaries. There's a lot of discussion at that time. There wasn't, I don't think there was much public input in the ordinance committee. But now we have a review of some of these dispensaries under our belt. And so these issues arise, and as Mr. Cato said, the ordinance committee is going to be looking at this ordinance and addressing some of these issues that have arisen that the public has brought up and that staff's brought up. And that's actually next Tuesday up at City Hall at 12? At noon. But right now, my purview, I have to review this application under the existing rules. And when the ordinance was developed, the City Council looked at various areas in the city where a dispensary was allowed. There's certain commercial zones. They set up distances from parks, schools, and daycare centers. No, parks and schools, and from other dispensaries. That was the other one. And there was discussion whether to also have a radius distance from residential uses or residential zones, and the council decided not to go down that route. And my experience with these is that residents adjacent to them have these concerns, and we only have one legal operating facility, and there's another one that's been approved. And that one on Milpas was appealed to the Planning Commission, and they upheld that approval. And there's actually another one that I announced at the beginning of the hearing that's on tomorrow's agenda. So in terms of the history of these legal facilities, we're just going to be starting to learn from that. So I think a lot of the fears are from these illegal operations. And so I've heard a lot of the concerns that the neighbors have. But in reviewing the project, reviewing the application or the operational plan, reviewing the ordinance, I think with these changes and clarifications that we discussed, that your current project meets the criteria set out in the ordinance with your security plan. I have a concern with the recessed door, and so if I would approve the project, I would require that the door not be recessed and that other options be explored, and that you don't need to come back before the staff hearing officer with those other options. It could be with the police department and ABR, that's fine. But in terms of security, I think a recessed door has the potential to cause some issues. And I know in other dispensaries, there's other forms that have been approved on corner locations that have more visibility. But I think, I believe in terms of the security aspect of it, that it would be better that it's flush. In regards to the conditions of approval, proposed condition of approval, with the change in the door location, I don't think there needs to be any change with the cameras. It's still the same amount. An alarm system, the street windows, those will all be reviewed with the police department. I would like to add a condition that exterior lighting be shown on plans or be reviewed and approved by the ABR, which is their purview. It's kind of just states for the record. Although even if I didn't put that on, it'd still be a requirement. Also, add a condition that the operational plan be revised for our discussion today, and that the exhibits, it probably will make more sense. I see Mr. Cato has a nice bound document that when it's all together as one and not just put together for the ease of the staff report with the full-size plans. It's redundant and causes confusion when you're looking at two different sets of plans, so I can understand why just one large set was submitted to me. So, and then also the condition of the door not recessed.
Can I bring one condition up also of approval?
Yeah.
There was one condition of approval having to do with visibility into the, by the police department into the facility. And I think there might have been some misunderstanding on that requirement, because I've talked to Captain Martell on other projects, that that requirement was visibility into the reception area, not visibility into the dispensary.
Well, I think it just says street front windows shall be kept clear of any obstructions, including interior exterior window treatments to facilitate visibility from the street. That's something, I don't know, I hear you trying to say something, Danny. I mean, that's right from the wording of the ordinance. So if there's a window...
Ms. Reardon, I've also spoken to the police department, and maybe this will have to be changed in the ordinance, but the idea, I don't think the ordinance envisioned a dispensary necessarily where the actual dispensing operations are visible from the street. It wasn't the intent of the ordinance writers, I don't think, and it's definitely not preferred by the police department to have the actual cannabis dispensing operations visible from the public. So the intent really was for the lobby area. It was for the lobby area to be visible, and that's what it says in the last sentence of condition 7. And I think it's the preference of the police department to allow some sort of covering on this window so that the actual dispensing is not visible from the street.
Well, why don't we add, it says right now, the street front windows shall be kept clear of any obstructions, including any interior or exterior window treatments to facilitate visibility from the street, or as approved by the police department?
Yeah.
Unless otherwise approved by the police department?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. Because I'm looking through the ordinance, and I don't actually see that particular requirement. I just want to make sure that we're not going against the ordinance. Under G1 of the ordinance, it says the floor plan, last sentence, primary entrance shall be located and maintain clear barriers, landscaping, and similar obstructions so that it is clearly visible from public streets, sideways, or site driveways. But I don't see the window section. So I don't think we're going against the ordinance by putting in that language saying subject to the approval of the police department. I think that would be fine.
Okay. And that would address your
Yes, thank you.
concern. Any other questions on the conditions?
That was the only one.
That was the only one? Okay. So, so as I was stating, the review of the application submittal requirements and the site plan, and that the proposed dispensary meets the criteria in the ordinance, and I could make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve the project subject to the revisions that we discussed regarding number 7, where it's unless otherwise approved by the police department, adding a condition that the front entrance door not be recessed, that the exterior lighting shall be shown on the plans, and that the operational plan will be revised prior to discussion today. Okay. And this application is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days of today, and that appeal is filed here at our planning counter versus City Hall. A lot of the other appeals are filed at City Hall, so that's actually here. The Planning Commission also has oversight authority of all my actions that you guys sat through the other 2 items, that they review my actions, and if they feel it warrants discussion before their commission, they have the ability to call it up within that same day, 10-day appeal period. And if either of those instances were to occur, Mr. Kato would contact you. Okay?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Sure. And I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.